Hello, hello, everyone. I am Kelly Blackman, and with me I have Francesca. Is it Kobar? How do you pronounce your last name?
Kober.
Okay, thank you so much. Guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of How to Win at Everything. I am going to start us off with my cheesy intro, and we will go from there.
Have you ever wondered why you struggle to find success or fulfillment or lasting happiness? It's probably because your default wiring is set to lose. The How to Win at Everything podcast looks at real people who have struggled with the same insecurities, fears, doubts, and expectations and found a way to succeed. Why? Their brains are rewired for success. We dive into their thought patterns to show you how to rewire your own brain to win at everything.
So, good evening again, everyone. Um, right now, there is going to be, so the first thing I want to do, Francesca, is I want to make sure that I get you in here talking about your project. So, the first thing I want to do, can I have you? Sorry, I'm just playing on my tabs here so I can stop hearing myself in my ear. So, the first thing I want to do is I want to get you kind of talking about uh, this event coming up this Saturday. So can you introduce it to us? And then I want to kind of go into why you're doing it.
Yeah, the event is called Awaken Mental Wellness, and you can learn more about it at awakenmentalwellness.com. But we're primarily going to be screening a documentary film called Bipolarized, which features Ross McKenzie, and you get to
Mhm.
see his journey from being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, going on very strong medications over the course of about 16 years, detoxing off of those medications, and you get to learn about what he did to create wellness. And after the film, we'll have a Q&A with Ross McKenzie. He is an American who now lives in Costa Rica, and he works as a coach and has retreats, mental wellness retreats. So he's committed his life to helping other people heal.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think that's going to be a really good thing. Now, obviously, you and I haven't spoken a whole lot. I could put in my in my little promo that we got to talk for about maybe 10 minutes. Uh, but it was through Mike Paterano, who is a good friend, and Mike is a really good guy. And when he tossed it to me, he's like, "I know you're going to want to support this." And as soon as like you started talking, I was like, yeah, no, definitely. I want to support this. So, I want to try to have our guests get to know a little bit about you. So, how did this become something that was important for you?
I have struggled with my own mental health condition. It first sort of appeared in 2006, and I attended one of the premieres for Bipolarized when I was living in New York City in 2014. And at that moment, it was just this really serendipitous moment of wanting to know how to get better, and then coming across a film of someone who had, at that time it felt like, bipolar disorder can be a serious condition. So I
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
like if somebody can overcome that without medication, then
Hmm.
um, I can certainly learn something from him. So I go to the event. I'm really moved by the film and got to meet Ross. So it was a really great moment. And many years later, I end up connecting with Ross to work with him in a coaching capacity. So I got to know him. And of course, he helped me with, um, what I was going through at the time.
Okay.
And then I thought it would just be really great to recreate the event that I went to, and then get the word out to more people, especially right now.
Yeah. It feels like right now we're more than ever in a place where there's this there's this real need. Honestly, I mean, we look at the events from even just yesterday, and there seems to be an incredible strain on people, and without proper, I want to say mental care, but on mental health care, but honestly, without having someone to kind of unload some of this stuff on, it feels like it can be a burden if you don't have a history of mental health issues, if you don't have anything prior to this, just because of the situation we're in. What do you hope to be the outcome of I'm sorry, of the event Saturday?
Yeah, I just want people to be inspired. I want people to see this film. And I think that with a lot of the mental health conditions out there, even though Ross is, diagnosed with bipolar
Hmm.
disorder, it still applies to people who
Yeah,
have other conditions. So I want them to possibly see a little bit of themselves in the
yeah,
film,
yeah,
and get inspired to create their own journey, to just stay in the game of your own life, right? Just to be proactive about
yeah.
healing yourself.
What do you see is happening? Why is that not happening now?
I think that mental health conditions are challenging. They're really challenging to heal, because there's not, you have those occasions where you can go to therapy and you can get on a medication, and
Hmm.
that medication will help you. But oftentimes, even if you eventually find a medication, it's never really the first one, right? So it's always like
Hmm.
this it's a personal kind of uh, treatment where you've got to figure out what works for you.
So I know you said that you were kind of struggling with your own mental health stuff. Did you start off on medications?
I did. I was first prescribed medications when I was 19, and then when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, also given medications over the course of time. So I'm just one of those people who I build tolerances to these medications like pretty
Yeah,
quickly. So I was almost I had to find an alternative.
yeah. So okay, so I can, uh, the idea with the show itself is to try to try to get into your shoes and at least a little bit through your eyes. So can you walk us through what that journey looks like? You're 19, you're diagnosed, I guess, and what's happening for you at this point? What are the medications doing for you? Are they not doing anything for you? Were you tolerating them okay, or how did that work for you?
When I was 19, looking back on it, I think that it was my, first few years um, away from what I had known, right?
Yeah,
So high
yeah,
school and having friends. And I think I didn't realize that I just didn't have my same support system. So it was just like adjusting to the change of life. But I was um, diagnosed with depression
sure.
and given Zoloft,
Yeah,
and the reaction that I had to it was anxiety,
yeah,
and it just pretty bad um, reaction, and having kind of suicidal thoughts to it. So I thought,
yeah,
I don't want to be on this. And it was interesting because I talked to the doctor, and for whatever reason, I went to a general practitioner, right? So it wasn't like, he may
yeah,
not have been as familiar with the drug or the condition, but he didn't really know what to tell me. So it was kind of tough.
yeah. I say
To,
that's scary. Yeah,
yeah, it was a definitely a moment of just change, I would say, because at that point I had to decide, right? Am I
yeah,
going to let this um, take over, or am I going to
mm,
live
yeah,
and do something about it? So I chose to find a
yeah,
way to make my life matter and to make it a
yeah.
healthy.
Uh, d- uh, Look, I gotta commend you because I was I was diagnosed with ADHD probably 10 years ago. I've had so many family members who have been diagnosed with different things, everything from bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety disorders. So I've seen different people walk this sort of path of having to take these medications, seeing the side effects and that sort of thing. So and probably more than anything, seeing people have um, anxiety, having anxiety, suicidal thoughts, things like that, in reference to the side effects. Now, I'll be the last person to say, "Hey, guys, don't take the drugs," or, it's obviously not a one size fits all sort of thing. When you got to a point where you saw this film, what would you say was in it that made him actually say, "Hey, there's another way." And what did you take away from it when you first saw it?
I think the thing that I took away when I first saw it was just
Mhm.
um, how intense this kind of situation can be.
Yeah,
But there's always a way to heal. So um, it's it's very much a story of perseverance. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Now, you said that it was when you were, what did you say, late 20s, early 30s, when you went back to being on the medications, and you had built up a tolerance at that point. Can you kind of, I don't know, walk us through or explain a little bit how that works, what that looks like?
Yeah, the first benzodiazepine that I was on, that's a class of medication that they give for anxiety.
Hmm.
Um, it works right away. It works really well. I remember being in a really, really difficult place
Hmm.
and having my therapist contact a psychiatrist because she
Yeah,
was concerned. So I was given Xanax. And I remember, yeah, the first time I took it, I was like, wow, I just haven't been able to, relax in weeks or months.
yeah,
However, um, it wasn't very long until, 1 milligram turned into 2 milligrams, and then 2 milligrams turned into three. And then so I was up to 4 milligrams, which is fairly high dose.
yeah.
And so this was a time when psychiatrists, at least the one that I had at the time, wasn't too worried about it. It was almost like
Hmm.
I was a little more concerned about how much I was taking and
Interesting.
how fast it was that I was taking it. And so,
Yeah,
like, I would look up all of these, I would just do my own research and kind of I would see all these
yeah.
stories of people trying to get off of the medication. And I remember talking to him about it and he's like, "No, you're fine." And I'm like, "Well, I don't think so." um, so yeah, it was, 8 months into it, I'd asked to come off of the medication. I was
Yeah.
switched to SSRIs, so I had taken Lexapro, I had taken Klonopin, which is another
Hmm. Hmm.
benzodiazepine. So, you know, it was kind of one difficulty or another. And I think the other thing that's difficult is that, at least for me, is that I felt like it would be a never-ending cycle, right? It's
Hmm.
because sometimes psychiatrists will try to find the right cocktail. So
Hmm.
they'll give
Hmm.
you one, and then if you have adverse reactions, well, they'll give you
Yeah.
another one. And so then all of a sudden, the person's on multiple medications, and I just didn't want to go through that. I didn't want to go through having to take a medication,
Hmm.
build a tolerance, and then have to switch to another. So it just felt like
Mm,
it would be this. It would be just be
yeah.
too.
All got a cycle. Yeah. I,
Um,
so go ahead.
y-
Go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just going to say that the good thing is that in my experience recently, talking to doctors, I think
Mm,
that they are a little bit more conscious of not prescribing benzodiazepines
yeah.
for long periods of time,
Because it
because
can be addictive also, right?
right, they
Yeah.
have, um, the ability for addiction. So I
Yeah.
think they're really meant to just be for short term.
Yeah.
So I think there has been an awareness, and I think a good doctor is going to try and keep that in mind when it
Yeah.
comes to treating conditions.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I wanna jump a little bit ahead. Um, well, let's go into the events for this Saturday. I want to make sure that we get this out there quite a bit. Uh, Let me start off with. You said the. I'm sorry. Can you see the scroll at the bottom? Awakenmentalwellness.com was the site.
Yep.
All right, so I got that scrolling on the bottom. Anyone looking today, between today, tomorrow, early Saturday, please go to this website. It's actually going to give you all the information about Francesca. And I'm sorry, I forget the other guy, the one who's actually in the film. I've read it a bunch of times. I forgot his name, but it actually gives information about both of them. It's going to be a Q&A. Well, why am I saying this? Here, Francesca, can you tell us about what will happen Saturday?
Yeah, yeah. So we'll be screening the film Bipolarized, and it's featuring Ross McKenzie.
Ross
And
McKenzie.
after the film, we'll have a Q&A with Ross McKenzie, and he'll be able to answer any of your questions about his wellness journey.
Right. Now, the important part I thought at least was, well, a couple of pieces that to me strike me as very important. The one part is about the mental health journey being without extra substances, without having to take these different drugs. And again, not that they're just bad, but obviously there is some benefit to uh, not being on them. So I thought that part was interesting. The other thing, though, that for me really like strikes a chord is this idea about normalizing the fact that mental health issues do exist, and they're going to exist for plenty of people. And kind of like we were talking about with, like I was mentioning earlier, with the events from yesterday, uh, there are some real stressors out here that are going to push and pull and make people have a tougher time kind of dealing with some of this stuff. So can you kind of speak a little bit to um, maybe the difference between, what did you say? It was when was the first time you were taking this? Was it '06? Did you say?
Um,
Or
well, when I
22?
was 19 was when I had first taken Zoloft, and then like my late 20s, so the 29 to 30 is kind of like the second period.
Well, I'm thinking about when you first were diagnosed, when you first actually decided to even go see someone about this. What was the state? Maybe even not countrywide, but at least in your area with your contemporaries. What was the state of how people thought about mental health or going to see your therapist?
I think for the most part, therapy was supported. I
Okay,
think in my family, my mom was concerned about
sure.
um, going on medication, and so
Hmm. Hmm.
um, yeah.
Okay, okay. Now I know for me, started probably that journey 15 years or so ago. So maybe '05, '06 or so. And and it is just it is a thing in the black community where, a lot of times you get that whole you don't talk about mental health. Um, Even if Uncle such and such is a little bit crazy, you don't talk about it and that sort of thing. And in a lot of ways, and here's the thing: my father's a therapist, my mom's a nurse. They're very into trying to take care of yourself, that sort of thing. And even so, there's still a little bit of a stigma on it. So I'm happy to hear that between your family, your group, that you didn't get any of that, or at least not enough of that to stop you. Um, do you expect, though, that having films like this, which obviously you don't see a lot of mainstream films addressing these sort of things, do you get the sense that getting this film out there, getting Ross out there, kind of talking about this stuff will help to normalize this more?
Absolutely. And I'm hoping that it will get people to talk about their conditions more, because isolation is really what makes things worse. So if
Yeah.
you're able to see other people talking about what's going on, then maybe you'll talk to people you trust, and just get get it out there that you're struggling and that you want help.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing. Let me ask, when with this show, we're usually looking for whatever foundational pieces that can help people to kind of, again, walk a little bit in your shoes and see. So, what was it for you that helped you to, first off, identify that there was anything going on, but secondly, to kind of get you over any sort of bottleneck that got you to actually talk to somebody about what may have been going on with your mental health?
I think at the time, definitely when I was 19 and then again in my 20s, it was just so hard to function. So I think it was
Mm.
only natural to try and want to do something, especially when I was working, right? In my
Yeah,
late 20s, I had a lot of demands. So when it kind of gets in the way of being able to do that, you
function. Yeah.
um, just find a way, yeah, find a way to function.
I like that. And again, for anyone who's like watching, uh, this is one of those telltale signs. This is one of those things that you'll notice that it starts to get in the way of your functioning. It starts to be an issue with your relationships with other people and that sort of thing. You'll actually start to see that there's something that's blocking you. When you have something like that going on, the last thing you want to do is isolate. The last thing you want to do is not talk about it. You want to make sure that you actually bring this up to someone, because it is a case that everyone feels some version of this, and it can get worse by not bringing it up. Mike Paterano and I did a show last Wednesday actually, about not being alone, because it is the case that during the holidays we know that these things are heightened because of the isolation, the lack of family, that sort of thing, and obviously with COVID-19, it's even more so the case. So it really is something we're trying to push and really make normal to actually talk about this. So I'm sorry, I want to move back forward though to the events for this Saturday. Um, the event is free, correct?
Correct.
All right, it is free. So and it is starting at what time?
2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Alrighty. So what I want to try to get into a little bit more, and I hope you don't mind, because um, the idea is that we want to try to see everything through your lens. So I hope you don't mind me kind of digging more into the story of Francesca, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right, great. So let me ask you: once you met Ross, once you kind of started this journey, what did that look like for you? I mean, for you in particular.
That was a time where I was really doing a lot of personal development,
Hmm.
and I made pretty big changes in my life. I was in New York City for a period of 5 years.
Hmm.
So that environment, I think, was good for me at the time
Yeah.
because New York's just a place where you're really there if you want to make something happen, right? You want to,
Yeah.
so it's like this, it's like you either are there to make a big goal happen or you just kind of leave. Like you get out of everyone else's way
Gotcha.
because they're trying to make things happen. So I think I really dived in pretty deep in I worked with a Tony Robbins coach.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Yeah.
Another really good thing about New York City is that the healthcare there is great. So if you're
Okay.
looking for a doctor, there's so many really great doctors. So I worked with not only psychotherapists, but I worked with mindfulness-based cognitive therapists and
Mm,
music therapists. I mean, you can really find anything and
yeah,
everything
sounds like a
there.
wide breath. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're there, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop you. So when you're there, you realize what's going on. You say, "Hey, let me go and start working on this," and then um, you start working with all these different therapists. How did that work for you? Did you feel like it was just like a clean sweep and you're off on your way, or was it? Did you struggle with that? How did that work?
It definitely took time. It definitely
Okay.
took time to see some change, and I would say that the next kind of biggest change was towards the end of 2016, where I leave the fashion industry
Mm,
and go and work for myself. So I could say that a lot of that was from working with the Tony Robbins coach.
Yeah.
And because when you're in a coaching series of sessions, you're focusing on specific goals. And
Hmm.
so um, one of my goals was to make a certain amount of money, but also just
Hmm.
eventually have autonomy. And
Yeah.
I realized through all of that, especially on those occasions where you're being asked to like plan your life, right? You're kind of like living life intentionally.
Yeah.
So I had to answer the question of like, what makes me happy? What do I need in my everyday to make me happy? So it took some time to figure that out, but
Yeah.
I came to the realization that freedom and autonomy makes me happy. And so leaving the fashion industry and creating my own business was necessary to
Nice.
get that.
I think that's beautiful. Most of us, I think, are in this sort of rat race of trying to reach out for things that other people want, or other people's expectations, and that sort of thing. So I think it's a beautiful thing to kind of see you basically say, "Hey, this is what I set out for. I was here. I set out for this. I got this, and now I'm looking at everything that I've done and saying, I want to do this for other people. I want to help out other people." So when you that being said, what does it look like for you to have this part of your journey where I mean obviously people are going to do other stuff on their weekends rather than trying to organize events to help people who may need to see Ross's film. So what drives you to do that? What goal is that? What part of this whole lifestyle that you wanted includes that?
I think that having such great mentors over the course of my
Mm,
life has inspired me. And I would say Ross is a mentor. So
yeah.
he's gotten to that point, and I can probably say that he's inspired me to want to do that for other people. But even, I mentioned Tony Robbins. He's very much a big inspiration to me. And I
Sure.
think that
Yeah.
he will say that um, the point of living is giving, right? Like that's really what life is about. When you
Yeah.
can get to that point of being able to help other people, I mean, that's what makes life fulfilling.
Hmm. What is it? What in the end? How do you see this working out? Where does this event today? Is this the end of something or the beginning of something for you, or just
It's
a continuation of something?
Yeah, it's definitely the beginning of something because we are planning on having an event about once a month with someone who has conquered a mental health
That's
condition.
beautiful.
And I think what we're trying to find out is the pattern of what unfolds, like what's the common theme between people who have conquered a health condition and created wellness for themselves. So I think that's
Mm,
going to be really interesting to see like what it is, like what's the thing that you have to believe about yourself to be able
yeah.
to do this.
Such an interesting thing for me in particular because this is exactly what I set out to do when I started this live stream show. I'm thinking to myself, um, for me, I know that my mental health journey has been what it's been, but when it's just you, you lack perspective. And I've had probably 25 or so of these shows at this point, and I've talked to people who have grown up with abuse or who've lost their children or who were in public housing or people who were sexually abused. And I mean, to see these people now, they're these are all the people that our society says if they're the junkies of the world, the alcoholics of the world, we're okay with that because they're off to the side. But these are people who are all living, people who are all striving and all achieving things. So it's an odd thing because for me, I totally connect with that journey. I totally connect with what you're doing. I think that's beautiful. Um, once that's done, right? Once you get this going, have you thought out where it goes next, or what you do with that information, or with that ongoing thing?
It's I haven't really thought that far into the future with it, but I think that there will come a day where there will be a more concrete answer, right, as to like
Sure,
what it takes. So I mean, that could involve a book, that could involve
like
a
that.
lot
Yeah.
of things. I think I do want to just kind of wait and see what unfolds.
No, makes sense to me. Makes sense. And I know I gotta put you on the spot because we're live.
Right.
But I do, but I do love where it comes from. Um, I'm always looking for like the foundational pieces because a lot of times it's the case that for us we don't have always the um, some of us don't have the parents or the support, or some of us have something genetic. There's always a chance that we have something that robs us of having full potential all the time. So for you, and I have to imagine that based on the number of people I talk to, there's still sort of a rarity that people have to get up and go to say, I feel that there's a problem. Let me figure out what it is. What do you think there is about you? Because when you said it like it's a very natural thing. You're like, oh yeah, well, naturally I want to try to figure it out. But honestly, there are a lot of people who are like, there's something going wrong. Let me turn the other way and let me not ever address that. What is it about you that says, I want to know, I want to figure it out, I want to get it right?
I think that I've always been a pretty resourceful person. I have a really amazing mom. I mean, my mom is from Brazil. I'm from Brazil as well.
Yeah.
So I grew up with a really amazing role model, right? So you have an immigrant mother who,
Hmm.
it's sort of a situation where you just work. You don't really ask for um a lot, right? You don't
Yeah. Yeah.
live life where you kind of expect things to be rolled out on a red carpet for you. You just work and you do what you need to do. And so I think seeing her be so self-motivated
Yeah.
was having was she was just a really good role model for me.
It's an interesting thing. Is that being said, is it a case that without that, well, no, actually, with that, did it make it harder to say, let me reach out and try to get help from a therapist, from a doctor, from anybody? Because it sounds like it's an independence also involved in that. So did that come into play at all?
I think I've been in situations where I've done both, where I've just tried to
Mm.
like, white knuckle it and just
Hmm.
just endure it. And then there are other times where I have thought I've got to do something. So I think it just kind of depends on like what was going on at the time. But obviously, it's always better to do something, right? You've got
Right.
to.
Do nothing. Yeah. That's interesting. So, okay, and I'm sorry, we're just gonna pick through your experience. But if it's a case where, how do you know which one to do? How do you know the difference? You know, when I was growing up, I know that there are plenty of people who are in my world or in my family. If you're a man, you do this, and those are hard, fast rules. Doesn't really matter. You don't cry. You don't feel. You don't emote, and those are like standards that we have to live by. Growing up. So there are things that I would have never asked for, no matter how much it hurt, because those are the standards. How do you know? Um, how do you know which way to go when those things come up?
Yeah, I mean, there. I think it's got to be a healthy thing to question and challenge things, right?
Yeah.
Like if your environment is telling you that something is not okay, um, I think it's just going to be curiosity or just openness to wondering whether there's another way of living.
Hmm. I think that is so awesome because again, uh, it's been my experience at least that so many of us are living by the expectations of whatever, usually our parents, but our parents, our family, our society, our culture, and we're trying to live within the confines of that. So I find that a lot of people aren't saying, "Let me question," let me try this out, let me explore. Um, is that something that your mom instilled in you, or is that something that you came up with? Just growing up on your own.
I think it could just be being a creative person.
Okay.
So I design websites, and I
Yeah.
have always been creative. I went to school for fashion design, and then had worked in the fashion industry. So I think that does help.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. So I just need to have all of my clients go into fashion design and we are good to go. No, I think
No,
that's a beautiful thing.
tell them to
I'm sorry.
not go into the fashion
Right.
industry. It's like a cutthroat, terrible place to be.
Wow. I've only seen it on TV, but I felt like that was the case. And look, we can probably have a whole other show where we talk about that. I think that is interesting enough to
Yeah.
have a whole show about. Um, so okay, we're walking through your journey here. We see what kind of person you grow up as. Were you born here in the U.S.?
I was born in Brazil, and
You were
then
born in Brazil.
yeah,
Okay, and how old were you when you got here?
2 years old.
Okay, okay. So most of the growing up was in the U.S. Just wondering, like, how much were you Americanized, age-wise and that sort of thing. So, okay, the bulk of your time has been spent in the US. Um, when it comes to the idea of this sort of work ethic, um, especially when you're in college and you're not around your support system, is that different for the people that you're around? Was it a culture shock for you going to college and kind of having that difference and not having like your people around?
I think a little bit of a culture shock, um, and I think that yeah, at that time you put a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I remember like having yeah, going through periods of time where I just had a lot of fear about like what's my future going to be like,
Yeah, especially at
so
that age, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely,
I
definitely.
it's such an interesting thing because um, when I imagine, like, did you go away for college or were you still home?
So I stayed home, and I when I first went to college, I went to Rutgers and then
Mhm.
transferred to Parsons School of Design. So I was pretty much home and commuted to college because
Good,
I lived
good.
in New Jersey.
Yep. I always wonder, like, if that's an okay thing because a lot of times you're putting the kids in a place where they're still forming. So much of them is still forming, like their brain hasn't fully formed yet, and you're basically saying go out and deal with these new social things. Um, eh, how aware were you of the fact that there was a change? Because I know you said like you figured it out because there were like situations where you felt uncomfortable, it was uneasy. How aware were you though that's what was going on versus how much are you just like this sucks, I don't like this.
I think probably the initial few years when I was at Rutgers and
Hmm.
and not having my regular group of friends,
Hmm.
I don't even think it took a while for me to really understand. Like it
Okay.
took hindsight to know. And then going to school for fashion design, as great of an experience as that was, it was also like it was just a tough
Yeah.
place. I think that like the way, at the time, Parsons kind of like tried to make the curriculum so challenging that when you go into the real world, it'll be like
It
a
was okay.
cakewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Uh,
Uh, so I'm sorry. I just want to double check now. So, do you think that this specific industry was also a big factor because it was so hard and the industry itself is cutthroat? Do you think that played a part in like kind of exasperating the condition?
A little bit. I mean, I think that, yeah, I think that I basically felt like I went to school for fashion design, so I need
Hmm.
to stay in fashion design no matter what. And so I
Yeah,
think that putting myself in such a box just
interesting.
didn't give me many choices. So that in itself makes your life really like tight and small. So
Hmm.
I couldn't see anything outside of that. It felt like I don't want to disappoint my parents by
Yeah.
changing careers. I don't want to, what else would I do? Um,
Is that part of that stick to itiveness that that white knuckle approach?
yeah, I think it was just feeling like I made a plan when I was really young and I thought that I can't not stick to it.
Yeah.
But healing the healing process, I think, made me realize that there are more opportunities. You don't
Yeah.
have to box yourself in. So yeah, that I think I did limit myself for a really long time, and that yeah, that absolutely just is
It's insane, isn't it? Trying to live within that box of expectations and
hard.
uh, the freedom that comes with babies, basically letting some of that go is amazing. I'm really happy that you found your way through that. Um, so, just kind of completing your journey, or maybe just furthering your journey, you get out of fashion design. You had a plan, I guess, for getting out of fashion design and starting your own business. What did you decide to do?
I decided to design websites. So I have a brand called Ethos by Design, and I design websites and branding.
Wow, that is beautiful. Um, how far is this? How different is this from the fashion industry?
It's fairly different.
Good.
It's Yeah. I mean, the thing that's so great about what I do is that I can choose who's in my life.
Yeah.
Um, I think that was the toughest part about being in the corporate world because you just have to work with whoever's around you.
Mhm, mhm.
And it only takes like one toxic person to make a
Mm,
situation bad. So I hated the fact that I felt like I was just like a victim to my environment always. So what I
yeah.
like now is that I can choose people to partner with. I can choose what clients to work with. And so that's I think really great because I
I
have
like
just
that. Mm.
more just control over my like environment, and that is really great.
I feel like that's another one of those foundational pieces. Excuse me. That one of the things that we probably have to be more aware of is our environment and the idea of being more in control over what we allow in it. So, fashion design, there's toxic people. I mean, I'm gonna imagine that not everybody you work with is a saint, and some of these people are just bastardly people and make it hard. What do you do? Uh, what's different now that you can do or that you do that you weren't either able or weren't doing before?
I think that I have so much more say in how everything works. Um, because it's my ideas in conjunction with the ideas of my client. So we really partner together. So I think just
Nice.
that partnership is
Mm,
so much better. I think when I worked for larger companies, sometimes it just felt like I was just this small voice that, didn't really matter all that much.
I agree. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I always wonder. So, doing business coaching, it's always this idea of and I imagine that most coaches say something along these lines that you're really only coaching about the business about 10%. Like 90% of it has to do with the person. So I know
Mhm.
you were saying that you were being coached, you're being mentored. What did that lead to? What did you were you able to discover your why or where you wanted to end up?
Absolutely. I think that the biggest takeaway that I got from coaching was how to create lasting happiness.
Mm,
And it was interesting because the coach that I work with, her name is Erica Needy Becker. And so when you're working with a Tony Robbins coach, every week you're asked to write down, you know, 3 things that you're grateful for. And I remember
mhm.
at the beginning of that, I had no idea of how to answer those questions at all. And so that comes from focusing on the things in your life that are wrong, right? If you
Yeah,
just like think about all of those things, then
yeah.
your baseline happiness is pretty low because you're
Yep,
just focusing
yep.
on like what I don't want, this what I don't want. So I thought it was interesting that it took some time for me to find things to be grateful for. And then as you're doing it every week, you just naturally do it. And
Mm.
happiness is really just that. It's just being grateful for what you have in the moment.
It's interesting, right? There's such a huge paradigm shift. Do you this may not be a question you can answer, but do you have any idea of where that focusing on the negative stuff, focusing on the failures, focusing on whatever things you were focusing on, where that came from?
I think it was just n- not understanding how real change works. So I think it really was just a pattern.
Mm,
And then maybe, having like a difficult, having some difficulties in childhood, it's like
mhm,
you kind of get used to like things being chaotic. So you get used
mhm.
to looking at the things that are like hard. But yeah, I think it's just a pattern. And then you don't even realize
Yeah.
that it's a pattern. You're just like, you
I,
know,
I I think it's an interesting thing, and the reason I ask, again, I hate to put you on the spot, but it's the case that I guess that's why we're here to really get some of this out. For me, what I realize is that my dad would come home from work and he'd say, he'd get us up at like 7 in the morning because he's like, "Hey, summer vacation for you is not summer vacation for me. Get up and work." So we'd get home. He'd get home and it would be like, 5 o'clock, and he'd say, "Hey, I gave you 20 things to get done. What did you get done?" And we'd be like, "Well, we got done 19 of these things, Dad." And he'd say, "19 of them, huh? Why didn't you get the 20th thing done?" And he would harp on that and yell about that. And what it made me realize is that. Um, that's probably what a lot of us get, a little bit of, let's focus on the things that are wrong because those are the things that need to be changed. And I asked him one day, like, man, why did you always focus on the one thing? And he's like, well, the other 19 things are good already. You got to focus on the one thing that needs to be changed. And I do get the feeling that this is a common thread. I don't know if this is culturally or if this is gender wise or if it's just people. I think we do tend to focus on the thing that needs to change so much that that law of attraction, we just start drawing it to us because that's where our attention is going. Um, can you kind of give an idea of what's been different since you've been focusing on the things you're the things you're happy about, the things that you feel that are going well for you?
I think that it's all been really great. And another mentor um, that I've had has been Tim Ferriss, who wrote The 4 Hour Work Week. So
Hmm.
reading that book definitely changed things for me.
Mm,
I think that was one of the biggest catalysts in me realizing that I wanted to start my own business,
mm,
because the thesis in that book is that people tend to defer happiness. So, like
mm,
the regular kind of American life plan is to work at a job and retire. And then when you retire, that's when you'll rest and be happy. So he's kind of saying, try to find a way to be happy today. Don't
mm,
defer your happiness to later. I think that was really
mm,
definitely life changing for me.
mm. Um, I think that this is. Oh, sorry, Emily is mentioning here. And Emily is one of our coaches, not our coaches, but one of the coaches on LinkedIn. She makes a really good point. That's how her dad was with her, with the idea of let's focus on the negative thing. I just think that's such a great thing. Thank you so much, Emily, for joining in on this. It's a great discussion. I, so I wanna kind of ask Francesca about this idea of where this where this sort of positive psychology, positive thinking takes you, because it sounds like, based on everything you've mentioned, that you've kind of gone from one spot all the way to this other spot of being kind of happy and healthy and fulfilled. Um, if you had to name a single thing uh, that is the part that made this happen, what would you say it is?
I
I
would
know it's
say,
maybe tough to pick one. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
one thing that's made all of it happen, I think it's believing that there's more, that anything is possible, even if I have to do a lot to find answers. I think I will. So it's resourcefulness. It's just believing in the possibilities.
Okay. Okay. So everyone looking, listening, that's another one of these foundational pieces. You do have to start off with the belief. Now, let me ask you about this. What about a starting point? So we got a chance to hear a little bit about what kind of clicked in your mind, like when you started to realize, oh, hey, there's something going on. What what would you say would be, and this is just your experience, but what would you say is the starting point, the one thing that you have to pay attention to recognize if you need to get some help, if you need to change something, even if you need to think of something, what's that one thing that they need to start with?
Definitely, if you're just having a difficult time functioning or coping, if you notice a change in your ability to socialize with people or to get work done or to focus or sleep, then that's going to really be a time where you're going to want to understand that something's not right, and that you deserve to be able to function every day really well.
Right, thank you so much. And again, another foundational piece. We want to make sure that on our side, we're recognizing these things and not just kind of sweeping them under the rug, because there is sort of a tendency to try to normalize and be okay. So we may not talk about those things. All right. So, last tough question for you. And it may not be tough. You may actually have an answer for this one already. Um, I want to know that when you're at the end of your life, you're 90, 100 years old or whatever, how do you know that you had a good life? Like, what would you have to have done to know that your life was good?
I think that feeling like I impacted people would be amazing. To feel like um, someone has heard my story and has maybe become moved by it to changed their life. So I think just yeah, having that kind of an impact would be amazing, I think.
All right. I think that is awesome. Before we go, Francesca, because we're coming up on an hour, I want to make sure that we get a little bit more in again about the um, the event coming up this Saturday. Can you give it all to us again? I know I've gone over it a few times, but I'll make sure we got this. What is it called? When will it be? How can people find out about it? And how can they find you?
The event is Awaken Mental Wellness, and you can visit the website awakenmentalwellness.com. And we'll be screening the documentary film Bipolarized, starring Ross McKenzie. And after the film, we'll have a Q&A with Ross. And when you go onto the website, you can watch a trailer of the film and just register for the event.
Alrighty. Now, we are mostly on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. How can people find you?
They can contact me through the website, awakenmentalwellness.com.
Perfect.
There's a contact form on there. And forgot to mention the time of the event.
Oh, yes, yes.
Saturday, January 9th at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Alrighty. Francesca, thank you so much. I know we didn't have much time to plan this out or anything. You are a wonderfully beautiful soul, and I really appreciate you bearing that with us today. Um, if you hang on for a second, I'm going to have you go backstage, but I am first going to play us out with my very cheesy outro. Thanks so much for staying with us tonight, guys. Everyone, have a great evening.
Thanks.
Ta-da!